dây ta như đâm cho bạc loạt chừng dừng còn man liên on phun đằng xôn đâu từ xôn chứ lấy muối nhất này hoặc là đây là không muối thiết hay đây là lạnh tôi đâu có được bao lời mình bạn sẽ mong hơn
lời đó việc bên đó bao giờ chọn với trong sông muối địa ti và muối địa ti chun Scott của con coi nên he is very patient about that. Which now you chun pel God đam bay I got express his thought.
I'm patient because I just caught up. You speak Khmer, but I catch up in English. I understand that most of the discussion has been about unity.
Yes.
For today.
For today, yes. Well, for forever. What point of time have you ever seen more Cambodians united? Ever. In my lifetime, anyway. Think back. 2013. Political leader came back to Cambodia, and what happened? Tens of thousands of Cambodians met him on the streets. And then justice happened during an election, and for 13 months, tens of thousands of Cambodians united. Cambodians united to repel indignity, to stand for unity. We didn't always get along, but we had one mission, and that was to get that ball from here to there, regardless of what it took to get it done. But the point is that everybody worked to get that ball into that goal. They thought of nothing else. And when you think about that, and you were united in that one mission, you will achieve it. What I challenge you to do today, and Dr. was on the right track. You need a social contract. There is a social contract that has been written and people have implemented. One unique to world history. And I challenge you to remember and try to figure out what that contract was. There is. Okay? And when you come to understand that contract, perhaps you have a chance. Perhaps the Cambodians already know what they want, but you must acknowledge what they want and you must support them. You must be the teammate that can speak when they cannot speak. Okay? You must be the Cambodian. I shouldn't say the Cambodian. I'm addressing you as Americans. Okay? You as an American must join that team. Because America only becomes strong when the world is strong and accepts and understands what we are all about. So think about that. Take off the Cambodia, put on the American. Think like an American. And join that team. And you will be successful, I'm sure.
Thank you. But the morning job, Chị moderator ngày nay và dòng sông ô côn và việc bên dương tiếng ó đại dòng tay tay kết hà lục tiếng ó nâng lục sợi tiếng ó cứ chỉ kêu hay nhóm riêng và nhóm riêng tăng bị côn nhóm riêng bị côn nhóm riêng bị nẹt đại tây nẹt thua ca chỉ mực nhóm mệt phẹt nhóm ai đã class ta nhung riêng đi chơi vậy và riêng ở chỗ vậy và riêng đôi chân này dương riêng từng ở kia ngày này nhung chưa thật ngày này cứ chỉ ngày muối đại dương ban trọng này pavilion tại dương ban vô nâu ở quay đại chia cầm nứt đó là o và cầm nứt đó là o giờ tập ra lâu đó pe và nhóm sống ao unity robot dương chập đam pi dương đàn nâu nóc bật tung đi và ta vô prom một cho mấy bạn và đôi chân này nhóm sống ao unity robot dương chập đam pi dương nâu nóc bật tung đi alo nâng trâu bằng ri unity robot luôn tàu tam community robot luôn hai nhóm chưa thả dương ai chơi đôi đan đà lai cứ tham ca nâng cứ tham về tập đo na việc ca rít đọc đal bây giờ nâng bập ba nâng prao chi ba đôi chân này khi nhom biên tập nâng ok ngày nay som o côn bong ấy đọc nhóc nhưng lại qua đấy đôi chân này nhom thay vi ở trơn đó ở trơn vi ăn o và việc o đôi chân này dương ai ngày đấy lâu đông mong mấy các bạn và o côn ở chun tập đo ở sự thiệt bạn
và không ăn xong tích từ sao không máu này thì một phòng máu bởi máu chiên bởi anh từ vĩnh tay được tế nhỉ thì vua chiên phòng không chứa đó đó sao số 4 năm rất là vĩnh nữa nhưng máu tin đi máu krong Minneapolis này và dây đường Khmer nữa sao số 4 năm khối máu dây trả kết và chung lại anh em từ vĩnh nó còn bên đây béo rồi bóng phổ nhóm nụ đây vua nó nước nó ngặt ấy Facebook nó kìa khơi không bị phốp lô đây nó ba kế nó theo tên rong mà đi và được đấy xong một chuyện tôi thở phải tôi cho nhưng mình là gì chở này
country of Cambodia, because Hun Sen has said I'm no longer allowed to go there. So I have to see Cambodians outside of Cambodia. I want to talk to you today first about a bit about the human rights situation in Cambodia, some things that I want to emphasize, and then I've been asked to talk about the international environment and what we can do internationally. This is the recent report we published. I don't know if you can full screen it, but this is a report we call Cambodia's Dirty Dozen. Some of you may know that Dirty Dozen is the name of a movie in America about 40 years ago. And we thought it was appropriate to identify the people under Hun Sen who are helping keep him in power. Because everybody focuses on Hun Sen, and we should focus on Hun Sen because he is a dictator who consistently violates human rights. He's extremely corrupt. He probably has as much as $1 billion, even though he's only had one job all these years. And if you add up his total income from the last 30 years in power, he would not even be a millionaire. But he is a billionaire. Hey, how did that happen? I wonder. They are multi-millionaires. So we have people like Pol Sarun, who's been the head of the army, who is a former Khmer Rouge commander. And there is some evidence that he committed crimes in the Khmer Rouge, as long ago as during the Khmer Rouge period. Pol Sarun was responsible for human rights abuses. And he has been a senior figure in the Cambodian military ever since. So is it a surprise that a former Khmer Rouge commander who operated under the Vietnamese occupation and dictatorship is still committing human rights abuses? We have Sao Sokap, who is the head of the gendarmerie, now may be elevated to be in charge of the military nationally. Sao Sokap has been with Hun Sen since Hun Sen left. See, that's a shame. Please read this report. You must know Mok Chito. Mok Chito has been the most ruthless, dangerous, violent police officer in Phnom Penh for the last 25 years. During the UNTAC elections, there were something called the A-teams. The A-teams were used to target the opposition. There was A3, A90, A91, A92. They went around the country killing Fun Simpec and BLDP party members and activists. Mok Chito was a key member of the A-teams back then, but since then, he has been in charge of the police in Phnom Penh and every time I went to a rally, like when garment factory workers were protesting, Mak Chito would be there, being kidnapped. That was Mak Chito. That's bad. Basically, this is a mafia, as you know. And these are the mafia leaders, just one level below Hun Sen. And they're the people running Cambodia. And each of these people should be known to all Cambodians, because they're the people. Without these people, Hun Sen would fall. These are the kind of people. These people are running the army, the police, and the gendarmes. And they are the ones bringing money to Hun Sen, operating under Hun Sen's umbrella. And these are the people who were responsible for allowing Hun Sen to have a fake election and intimidating Hun Bun Hing in the Dirty Dozen. It was hard to choose which 12 should be in the Dirty Dozen, because there's a dirty 100, really. But that would have been a 1,000-page report. So Hing Bun Hing is not even one of these 12, but he was sanctioned by the United States for human rights abuses and corruption, something we've been working on for years at Human Rights Watch, to get them sanctioned under the Global Magnitsky Act. These people are on our list next. All of these people should be sanctioned for serious human rights abuses and corruption. Right? And I would hope that all the Cambodian community in this country will be writing letters, talking to members of Congress, writing to the State Department, saying these people need to be sanctioned. Because if what we have to do, in addition to these 12, and in addition to the United States, is we need to talk to other countries. Because if it's only the United States, it will be important, but it will not be enough. So we're working with the European Union to have them review the trade relationship between Cambodia and the European Union. The biggest export market for Cambodian garments, which is the biggest industry in Cambodia, is Europe. $4 billion of garment exports to Europe every year. The European Union, at Human Rights Watch's request, has initiated a review of the trade relationship, because to get access to the European market, countries have to have proper human rights. They have to, in particular, follow international labor law and implement international labor rules. And part of that is freedom of association. So if workers want to form a union, they should be able to form a union. And if they want to go on strike, they should be able to go on strike. It's up to them. And as you know, there have been strikes for... A delegation just returned from Phnom Penh after looking at the human rights situation in the country to decide whether or not Cambodia should continue to get access to the European market for garments and other goods. And they're in the process of writing a very, very negative report. And our goal is for them to come back sometime later this year to the Cambodian government and tell them that if they don't change the situation on the ground, that they will lose access to the European Union's market. Now, we don't believe with a private ownership interest not publicly known by these kind of people. You may remember after the 2013 election, there was violence when workers went on strike, and some workers were killed. January, I think, 2 and 3 of 2014, remember there was some shooting in Phnom Penh? It turns out that one of the Dirty Dozen, Chat Pickaday, General Chat Pickaday, he owned a factory that people thought was owned by a South Korean company. He had a South Korean partner, but he was the owner of the factory where the violence took place. And it turns out the reason that the soldiers were ordered to shoot was because the workers were demonstrating against his factory and moving towards his factory down the street. So because he had an ownership interest, he told the soldiers to defend the factory. And that's why they were killed. If he hadn't had an ownership interest, I don't think there would have been any shooting that day. So every factory, every investor in Cambodia must take a Cambodian partner, whether it's public or private. And more, these partners they're chosen by Hun Sen. They used to be chosen by Sokon as well. Sokon. And more, they are these people. And so there's a private owner of every garment factory or every other investment in Cambodia connected to Hun Sen. And that's how he gets his money. Another thing that we really have to work on exposing, I believe, by the way, that the human rights situation Hun Sen, the people around him, to do what they want with the money. I've been told this by many Cambodian officials. Is it in every contract? Maybe not. But most contracts, this is the basic formula. This explains why Hun Sen is willing to take so many loans from China. It's impossible. My friend Son Chai said many years ago in Parliament, when there was a discussion about a loan being offered to Cambodia, he said, why are we taking this? We will never be able to pay this money back. It's impossible. Do the math. It's very simple. Cambodia can never pay this back. So why would a government take a loan that they can never pay back? Because they're getting 20% of it. So your future and your children's future is going into the pocket of Hun Sen and his people around him. These loans, by the way, will have to be paid back. China is not going to let Cambodia not pay the loans back. I'll give you an example. In Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka borrowed more than $1 billion to build a port. A previous government under Mahinda Rajapaksa, the dictator of Sri Lanka, who lost in an election, is now out of power. More than $1 billion loan. The new government came in and said, we can't afford to pay this back. So China said, oh, no problem. That port that we built for you, just sign it over to us. Oh. We'll forget the loan. So now China owns some of the most valuable land in Sri Lanka, very near the capital, Colombo. They own this deep sea port where they're going to bring their navy, where Chinese workers now work instead of Sri Lankan workers, and where a lot of shipping is going to go through Sri Lanka and would have made Sri Lanka a lot of money, but guess who's going to get that money in the future? China. Not going to be Sri Lanka. China. So this is what we're seeing in Cambodia. And if you look at Sihanoukville, all the casinos, you see the deep water port that's being built in Sihanoukville. It sounds like it's going to be for the good of the Cambodian people, but when Cambodia can't pay the loans back for the port in Sihanoukville or any other project, it's going to come under the control of China. And I'm not against China. This is not an anti-China statement. If the United States was doing this, I'd be just as unhappy. This is a country selling itself for the good of these people, not for the good of the entire country. So we need to learn more about what China's doing. The big elephant in the room in Cambodia is China. If you're not looking at what China is doing in Cambodia, you will not see what's really happening. It's the most important development in Cambodia in years. Now, this can be good and bad for Hun Sen. It's good because it's providing him a lot of money, so he keeps paying these people and keeping them happy, and the people below them and the people below them. Why is the CPP and why are the army and police so loyal? Because they keep getting money. It's working for them. But Hun Sen has to keep finding new ways of getting money, and he can't do that forever. And if China ever says, you got to pay me back, I'm not going to be giving you money anymore, I'm going to take it, he's going to have problems. So relying so much on China may not be the best strategy in the long term. I don't know when we're going to have a tipping point where that could change. It doesn't seem like it's going to happen anytime very soon, but if he keeps going like this, it will happen. The other problem for Hun Sen with his complete reliance on China is that the public won't accept it after a while. And we already seen this in Sri Lanka, for example. One of the reasons that Mahinda Rajapaksa lost the last election was he was depending too much on China and only paying attention to China because of the 50-30-20 rule. In Burma, we've seen the change where the generals had to allow an election And Aung San Suu Kyi was allowed out of prison and house arrest largely because the public in Burma was really, really tired of human rights abuses and of too much Chinese influence. People said, in Burma said, we've just become the 19th province of China. We're no longer economically an independent, sovereign country. We're just becoming part of China, and we don't like that. And you probably all know the history in Southeast Asia. When China has too big a footprint, too much influence, in Indonesia, or Thailand, or Malaysia, Philippines, Vietnam, people don't like it. So it's very risky for Hun Sen. And we want to increase that risk by exposing what's going on, by identifying these corrupt practices and exposing what's going on. Okay, that's one side of the international discussion on Cambodia. The other side is that I believe Hun Sen made a major miscalculation. He has been getting away with murder for years, hasn't he? And there's been very little cost for him. He has been silencing critics. We're going to launch a political prisoner campaign in the next couple of weeks at Human Rights Watch. Most people outside Cambodia until recently didn't realize there were political prisoners. They did not realize it. There are at least 30 political prisoners in Cambodia, and depending on how you define the term political prisoner, there may be as many as 75 or 100. But Cambodia's prisons are now back in the business of having people because of their political beliefs, something we hadn't seen really since the 1980s. And there's been very little reaction to that. There's been very little reaction to his corruption. But when you stage a fake election, and when you have a Soviet-style, Chinese-style outcome with 100% of the seats taken by the ruling party, people start to understand what's going on. I'm frankly surprised that Hun Sen was so stupid as to not have some opposition in parliament. But he was schooled by the Khmer Rouge and by the Vietnamese Communist Party. And ultimately, as I've always said, he wanted that kind of system. He suffered, as far as he was concerned, and accepted that there had to be pluralism for a while because of UNTAC and the Paris Peace Agreement. But he never accepted it. And now he's doing what he believes, which is that winner take all. The powerful get everything. But there's going to be a consequence, and we're seeing it already. In countries that have been very soft on Cambodia in the last 20 years, France, Germany, Sweden, they're angry. In Britain, Canada, even Japan, they're angry. Our Japan office reports that the Japanese government really thought, I don't know why they thought this, but they really thought that staying with the election process and offering help to the National Election Commission, that Hun Sen would give something in return. He would make it look better. This is a very cynical view the Japanese were taking. But he would make it look good for them. But he's given them nothing. So people in Japan are saying, why are we supporting this? This is Chinese-style governance. Why would we support, with millions and millions of taxpayer dollars, why would we support this? All over the world, there's a reaction now, saying this is unacceptable. This is not what we agreed to. This is not what you agreed to. You've broken all your promises. And we're going to see, one by one, countries slowing down their relationship with Cambodia, cutting down on trade, advising their companies not to invest in Cambodia. We're going to see a big decline in foreign direct investment, I think, in Cambodia. Not from China. China will keep it up. We're going to see a huge drop in foreign assistance. A lot of countries are already cutting foreign assistance globally, and they're looking at which countries are going to be a good investment for us. We can help poor people anywhere in the world. We can help them in Africa. We can help them in Central Asia. We can help them in Cambodia. They need reasons to provide assistance, and that assistance is going to dry up for Cambodia, and that's going to hurt the Cambodian people badly, and that's going to hurt Hun Sen, because he has been relying for years on foreign assistance to pay for social welfare in Cambodia, while he uses the Cambodian budget to pay for the military. So now he's going to have to make choices in the future. if he wants to keep schools and health clinics and other things operating the way they are. So there's great risk here for Hun Sen. I think he miscalculated. He did not understand it. He may have thought, in the end, if I have China, it's enough, but I think that's wrong. And all of us have a role in trying to make sure that each of these countries that have been soft on Cambodia is really clear about what just happened in Cambodia, and that they make the right decisions about their relationship with Cambodia in the future. We should never see any more visits by Hun Sen to any democracy. That's one of my goals. He's never been to the US officially, but he shouldn't come here unofficially. He goes to France and meets the president. He goes to Japan and meets the prime minister. That should end. That needs to stop. He needs to also face a travel ban. So we are working for travel bans and asset seizures for the Dirty Dozen and for Hun Sen and the dozens of other people who have the same human rights records and records of corruption. And that has to be our goal, to isolate the regime, to make them feel the pain of what they have just done. So, I'm going to stop here, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
One question regarding the trip to, because he just made an announcement yesterday that the European Union invited him to a meeting in European country. Is that officially true? Or?
So here's the problem. The problem is that Europe and ASEAN have an annual meeting where all the ASEAN heads of government are invited. And it's very hard for Europe to disinvite one of the ASEAN leaders on human rights grounds, because there's a lot of leaders in ASEAN who have very bad human rights records. So we've talked to the European Union about this a lot. If they don't invite Hun Sen, they can't invite the Vietnamese prime minister. They can't invite Brunei. They can't invite Laos. Thailand is under military dictatorship. The Burmese army has just committed crimes against humanity against the Rohingya. Duterte is involved in massive killings in his country. So who can they invite? Maybe Jokowi. They might, the summit might be between the European Union and Indonesia right now. And they don't have a perfect human rights record. So our point to them is stop this summit. Stop giving legitimacy to all these people. You can have your relationships with the ASEAN countries, but don't do it this way, because every one of those leaders does what Hun Sen does. They bring their national media, they put themselves on TV, they show them shaking hands with the French president or Angela Merkel or the British prime minister, and then they present it back home as if they are a dignitary and they are legitimate, and everybody in the rest of the world thinks that they're fantastic.
When I listened to the Free Asia yesterday, and I listened to the Free Asia, so right now China supports strongly. Now they willing, they put money on that because the Europe and America stopped helping. Right now, China's always do that. So I'm worried about, they need, because Hun Sen right now look like he has some help, so he can live for a little while more. So what do you think? Thank you.
Well, that is the main support system for Hun Sen right now, is China. And I do think that China has made a very clear decision to support Hun Sen no matter what, because Hun Sen supported them over the South China Sea. This was the big moment for Hun Sen, when he broke with Vietnam and supported China when Cambodia was hosting the ASEAN summit, and supported China, and there was for the first time no joint communique from the ASEAN summit, where it was Cambodia against everybody else over the South China Sea. That was a strategic decision by Hun Sen to go with China instead of Vietnam. I know many of you think that Cambodia is still a puppet of Vietnam. I personally do not think that's true. That is old news. There's still a strong relationship, no doubt. I don't say that. There's still Vietnamese intelligence officials in Cambodia. We know that, we see them. But there are a lot of Chinese intelligence officials all over Cambodia too. There's a lot more Chinese money and a lot more Chinese influence. Hun Sen is trying to keep a good relationship with both, but China is his #1 support system. Now, the thing is, the Chinese economy is slowing down. China has a lot of problems. There's a lot of discussion in China about spending too much money overseas. Xi Jinping himself has said that they are spending too much money overseas. He's told Chinese companies to stop spending money internationally and spend it inside China, because their nightmare is the Chinese economy slows down to like a 3 or 4% growth rate, and they're going to have civil unrest in Cambodia. They're going to have protests on it in China. They're going to have protests on their streets. So it's not clear that Hun Sen can rely on China forever. We may be 5 years from now seeing the end of the Chinese economic mirror, in which case China will walk away from Hun Sen overnight. They care about Hun Sen a little bit. And for them, this is just like crumbs out of their pocket to give to Hun Sen. It's not expensive for them, but it may become expensive for them. And they'll say, you know what? We have more important things to worry about than Cambodia and Hun Sen.
Hello, Mr. Director of Human Rights Watch. And first, I would like to very happy to see you face my face. Yeah. I have 4 questions, but I have no time to ask all, but one among them. My question is that your presentation show just only a handful of high brass ranking military, that means they very deep involved in military action. Yeah, but why not? Why not? No. According to the report that Mr. Moon Hyung is or have already been pilot or preparation, but this is your proposal to the American government, But why not related to political figure? For example, the High Court Director, for example, many the spokesman of CPP, the spokesman of Ministerial Council, for example, Pan or the police. The police, Mr. I don't know what Mr. Kios, for example, very deep involved the same with the propaganda of the what we call the situation. This is okay, violated abuse rights, but those violated democracy. This is very important. Very two different. One violate human rights. Another group, politician, for example, etc. Democracy, very, very important. This is what how do you feel? Why not those people? Just only a handful of it. Thank you.
Just focus
on I agree with you. It's a very good point you're making. I work for Human Rights Watch, so human rights is our mandate. And these people have committed direct human rights abuses. So we identified them, the security forces, as a group that is responsible for killings, torture, arbitrary arrests, intimidation, breaking up protests, etc. Some of the people you mentioned are also involved in these things, but some of them are just spokespersons for the regime. And we have to give them their freedom of expression. I mean, you do not become a criminal because you're a spokesperson for a regime. You're a criminal if you commit an illegal act. So we have to be careful not to cross the line. However, one of the first things I was asked after we published this is, where's the rest of the people like this? And my answer was, I said earlier, we could write 10,000 pages. And we needed to have some limits to what we could publish so that we could actually publish. I could spend the rest of my life documenting all the nasty generals and colonels and majors and captains in the Cambodian military, police, and gendarmerie. But you would never read it if I spent the rest of my life. So we needed to publish. And so we picked a dozen. Yeah, I mean, look, if you're involved in making donuts, right? A dozen is a round number. I don't know why a dozen is a popular number, but we picked it. Second, some people asked us, why not all the opium? And the answer is we should do that, but Global Witness has been doing that very well. So they've been focusing on rich business people. We're going to do that as well, because their human rights abuse is kicking people off the land mostly. You know, over and over again we see around Cambodia, people getting kicked off their land and then having to move to urban areas and living in dire poverty because they can no longer grow food and sell it. And that's a massive human rights abuse. As you know, there's a case with the International Criminal Court on this question of land takings as a possible crime against humanity. And we support that. That's a very important case. So all these people need to be looked at. And they're all of these people. If it was just these people, it would not, if we got rid of all these people, Hun Sen might still survive for a while. If we got rid of all the Okna who support him, Hun Sen might still survive for a while. It needs to be, all of them need to be looked at. And the people like Mong Rati and others, they need to face travel bans and asset forfeitures too, because they are mafia and they have been taking corrupt money and putting it in foreign bank accounts and buying foreign property. I mean, Kong Vibal, we know, you've probably all seen the Australian documentary about Kong Vibal, but there's much more than that. We've discovered he owns property in London. Wow. He's a citizen of Cyprus and St. Kitts. Why do you become a citizen of those countries? Because you can't own land in those countries unless you become a citizen. How did he become a citizen?
Money.
Yeah. So this guy's in charge of the Department of Taxation in Cambodia. He's the guy who's saying to the Cambodia Daily and Phnom Penh Post, you have violated the law, and so therefore you must be closed or sold because you don't pay your taxes. I'd love to see Kong Vibal's tax return. Right next to Donald Trump's. I'd like to see both of those.
Thanks for all information what we learned from you and for Cambodian interest. For me, I just want to know that what kind of strategy for Cambodian living abroad to bring those guys to justice as soon as possible. And not take too long. What kind of strategy we need to do it to bring them to justice as soon as possible?
Yes.
One good example, let's say the Cambodians demonstrate at the mall that do not buy anything from Cambodia. It's a good strategy too or not? Thank
you. Good question. So partly, the answer depends partly on what you mean by justice. If you mean by justice, you mean putting them on trial for their crimes, that's not going to happen anytime soon. Right? In Cambodia, it's certainly not going to happen. You mentioned leaders in the justice system. Dit Mun Thi is the head of the justice system. I used to know Dit Mun Thi. Very smart guy. But he is dedicated to one thing overall, Dit Mun Thi. Second, he's dedicated to the CPP. And probably like number 25 on the list, he's dedicated to justice. So Dit Mun Thi is not going to allow a trial of these people in the Cambodian courts because, well, first of all, Hun Sen would fire him or put him in prison if he did.
Oh, wow.
But even if he had the courage to do it, the police wouldn't cooperate. So it's not going to happen in Cambodia. We know that, right? Not until there's regime change. Not until there's a new political party or a new person leading the country. However, asset seizures are a form of justice. So we need to work with the United States Treasury Department, the European Union, the British, all the European countries, the Singaporeans, where many of them are reported to keep their money, the Malaysians. Malaysia's facing this huge corruption crisis right now that brought down Najib, right? The 1MDB scandal. So they may be open to some transparency about money laundering inside Malaysia. Hong Kong. We need to work with all these places so that they identify money these people have, and then they freeze it, and they take it. Travel bans, that's a form of justice too. People don't like not being able to travel. I mean, when Hing Gun Hing was identified by the United States and sanctioned, you probably saw the reaction from Hun Sen day after day talking about how terrible this was. And one after another, senior military officials and CPP officials released statements. When we released this report, for a week, every single day, Hun Sen was talking about it. And each of these people would put out their own statements saying, I'm innocent, this is terrible, how could you say this about me? I'm a good person. What it made me, my happiest moment about publishing this report was Hun Sen gave speeches where he named all 12 people. It was so stupid.
Yeah.
And it went on national TV. Most people in Cambodia would have not known about this report except Hun Sen kept talking about it on national TV. And he would name each of the 12 and then say these are good people. Well, then obviously he had told people who the bad 12 people were. So there's different forms of justice. The justice I want is the one you want. These people are criminals and should be in prison. And that should happen someday. But until then, there's other forms of justice that we can work for to make their lives painful.
Okay. I really appreciate.
Yeah,
Thank you very much for. Hello. Thank you very much for your.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for your hard work over the years reporting on Cambodia. And I really appreciate your analysis. On the other hand, I have something to say. Okay. You know, I have. Okay. I have written done research on the impact of sanctions. I have yet to be convinced that economic sanctions have been effective. In fact, if you look at sanctions around the world, North Korea is a good example. And yet, it hasn't worked. So what worries me is that economic sanctions tend to result in human suffering. Not elite, not members of the elite. They are very wealthy, they're powerful, they suffer nothing. It's ordinary people who suffer. North Korea is a good example, Burma is a good example, Russia is a good example. Putin is very wealthy, and the Russian elite don't suffer. It's ordinary people. So my worry about imposing more economic sanctions. So I have, some real question about the resiliency of the ruling elite. Now, you pointed out very well about the important role of China in Cambodia. Cambodia is part of the global trend. The rise of China, I've written quite a bit on the rise of China, and how Chinese protection is so important to the CPP. And it's almost impossible to really undermine the CPP unless there is no more Chinese protection. So, again, if economically China is not doing very well, just when the Chinese economy, if the Chinese economy collapses, that will add a lot of suffering to the Chinese people, and also will have tremendous negative impact on the whole region. So what worries me is not that the implosions of the Chinese economy or the collapse of the Chinese economy will lead to more peace and stability. And because China cares a lot about the South China Sea, China would never give up, based on what I know. So Cambodia is the only country in Southeast Asia among the ASEAN countries that provide a base for China to really keep ASEAN divided. So the strategic importance of the South China Sea just make it impossible for China to give up on Cambodia. Okay. And China will do what it can to really protect Cambodia. So I just don't see a way out. And that's why, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first, I hope you all know what a great scholar you have in your midst here, and how important his work is. And I read almost everything he published, and I learn a lot from it. So thank you for all your work all these years. So I have talked about targeted sanctions, targeted economic sanctions against individuals. So that's easy thing. I think we all agree that that can be effective and useful. And even if it's not effective, it doesn't change their behavior. It stigmatizes them, it hurts their reputation, and it raises awareness about what's happening in the country. So that's valuable in and of itself. I said earlier about the European sanctions that I want them to be making serious and credible threats so that Cambodian government will change its behavior. I do think it's possible the Cambodian government will change its behavior on a sectoral basis. Do I think there will be a multi-party democracy as a result of trade threats? No. Do I think it's possible there will be major reforms in the labor sector for workers, and there will be more attention paid to the 50-30-20 problem, or things like that? That's possible. In other words, Hun Sen could make some concessions that are meaningful to lots of Cambodians before those sanctions come into play. I too would worry about the sanctions ever being implemented and Cambodia being cut off from the European Union, because there will be hundreds of thousands of workers who would lose their jobs. But if this is played intelligently, I think we can get a good outcome. On China, here's where I may slightly disagree with you on the South China Sea. China is now militarizing the South China Sea rapidly. And they're creating facts on the ground where they may not need ASEAN. It may not matter to them. They are so much bigger than all of ASEAN combined militarily that they may not care after all. They'll care, sorry, I shouldn't say it. They may not care very much. It may not be central to their strategy. The ASEAN split on the South China Sea was, at the very least, a time-buying exercise, so they could implement their facts on the ground. These long military landing strips, populated man-made islands, so that they may want Cambodia to support them in ASEAN, but they may not need Cambodia to support them in ASEAN. And I also don't think China's economy is going to collapse. That wasn't what I was saying, but it's a big problem for them if their growth rate goes down to 3 or 4% from 6 or 7. And that's when they may not feel like they have enough cash in their pockets to keep handing it out to them. So I think in the next 5 years we could see some serious movement in the China-Cambodia relationship that is good for the Cambodian people. But who knows? Listen, I can't end on that. Let me just say one thing. I'm a human rights activist, so we need to talk about action. What is really important, somebody asked this question, how are we going to make things change, is we need constant pressure on different governments. There are Cambodian communities in every key country except probably Japan, in Australia, all over Europe, Canada, United States. And those governments can't just hear from you around the time of elections or when there's a big tragedy. I have been told by so many people in the State Department, for example, that they still care about written letters. They don't really care much about change.org petitions because they figure people are they're clicking, which doesn't really show that they care very much. There's no effort in clicking. But when they get letters, if all of you were to write a letter today to the U.S. Treasury Department and to the U.S. State Department demanding that they implement sanctions, that they stop moving so slowly, and that they put these 12 people on the same sanctions as Ting Bun Ying, you have a good chance of influencing their decision to do this. Because right now they're hearing from me, and Human Rights Watch, and a couple other people, and we're not Cambodians. So we have a certain amount of influence, but don't underestimate the influence. Write letters. I don't know what you're going to do at the end of this conference, but I would suggest one resolution is that you all engage in old-fashioned letter writing to the U.S. Treasury Department and State Department. Because they told me that on a huge issue, like something, let's say, the Rohingya genocide, which we just saw last year in Burma, they might get 5 letters, and they read them. They don't read the emails and change their position very much. If you were to start flooding them with letters consistently, over and over again, they will take that seriously. So please think about that, because you have a role to play collectively that you may not realize. And now, as I was saying, Hun Sen has made a big mistake. He's officially ended democracy. He's officially ended the Paris peace agreements and everything happened on time. And now is the time for them to hear from me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brad Adams. At this point, I would like to invite the key committee members here to take a picture with Mr. Brad Adams. We're going to present the award of excellence to Mr. Brad Adams. We just read the award. Maybe you can present. The Overseas Khmer Summit 2018 Award of Excellence is hereby granted to Mr. Brad Adams for his bravery, standing up against dictatorship, outstanding services, and extraordinary commitment in promoting human rights and democracy in Cambodia and around the world. This award is conferred at the Overseas Khmer Summit held on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th day of August 2018 in Mannisota Heights, Mannisota, USA, signed by Dr. Napamdita Redapol, Mr. Chanda Thang, the award committee chair, and Mr. Thang Yap, the general secretary, Mr. Yon Yan, summit coordinator, and Mr. Wan Saw, the summit initiator. Thank you.
And on behalf of the whole committee of the OKS and the people in Minnesota, and especially all the Cambodian people inside the country and around the world, we present this